Mm. Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. Let me turn this phone off. I don't know why these people keep texting me, getting on my nerves. Y'all know I don't want to hear nothing to talk about. Y'all know I'm already talking that shit today. Sometimes you just gotta, you gotta get a little spicy. You gotta tell people what it is because I had to cut off a lot of people. Speaking of this toxic shame, actually, matter of motherfucking fact, before we get started today, guys, we're gonna be picking up this healing the shame that binds you, and we're gonna be starting from the section, or taking a skip around this section, the sources of toxic shame. So let me tell y'all something. Lately things have been getting a bit spicy. I think everyone is aware of that. I I've shared with you guys before that I finally received a letter from my mother in June last year, 2025. That was really so impactful. I had asked for the past 5 years for her to send this letter. Very simple, honest, easy request. What happened in your life growing up? I want to know your story. What happened when I was growing up because of all the gaslighting, lying, and lack of inability to trust her. To make a long story very, very short, she's finally sent a letter 5 years after unbelievable devastation. I haven't even spoken about that stuff publicly, but unbelievable devastation, like to the point where I was not even almost alive, multiple times during that 5 year period. And she still decided to send the letter 5 years later with complete gaslighting, lies, and bullshit. As we read in the reading a few minutes ago, also from the Healing the Shame That Binds You, Abandonment Through Abuse, I was a bit triggered because I saw multiple examples of how my abandonment played out and why I reacted so strongly. And so what I want to help you guys understand now, you know, is that this book here, Healing the Shame That Binds You, is going to help you really open your eyes to the consequences of growing up in that family dysfunction, that abuse, the neglect, the abandonment, the violence, the cruelty, the hatred, the vitriol of your parents to think that they have the right to control you, that you are their slave. Again, to have a child, to KILL the child, through physical abuse to destroy their will, what then is the point of having a child? You to raise a slave? No, we're not doing that anymore. That's why the world is so fucked up as it is. This toxic shame will cause you to continuously attract the same shitty people into your life. And I see it on repeat. So many of the people who have come into my life, friends, coworkers, bosses, people that I've dated, they are the same as my mother. Toxic, insecure, weak, pathetic people who prefer to externalize their emotions because they're too pathetic and lame to handle them on their own. What's more insane is you put boundaries with these people, and they are so I don't know if it's intentional or if they are just stupid or they don't care. And they still try to reach out to you like they don't understand that you just cut them off. And I really don't understand that. I've we've already communicated, to someone, your mother, your cousin, your friend, that I have this boundary, you are crossing it and I'm cutting you off, and they persist to try to contact you. Why? You know? Go do something productive with your own life. Why do we end up in these patterns over and over and over again in work, with our friendships, with the people that we're dating, with all of these? It's because of toxic shame. The toxic shame that we receive from growing up in a dysfunctional family where our parents were too um, incapable of handling their own emotions, and so they push them onto us. That internalization of the shame because of our parents' treatment of us causes us to behave with certain behaviors and patterns, to exhibit certain patterns, energies, thought energies, because of the subconscious beliefs, and that draws other repeated situations to us. And so it's so important that we learn to break out of this, because toxic shame that's the thing that makes life not worth living, because you're not even able to express yourself, you're not able to feel joy, you're not able to feel pleasure, you're not able to enjoy being with people, you're not able to build, to do anything. And so it's so important that we find a way to work through this. So important. So I'm going to start with chapter 3 and maybe do some skipping around. We already read a little bit of this section of chapter 3 earlier today, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this book is quite long. So let's start. The major sources of toxic shame. This is a quote by Joel Kovitz. She learned to dismay that. She learned to her dismay that she only felt love when she wasn't being herself. It's a quote, also another quote by Joel. COVIDs. Children will invest as much energy as they need to ensure the preservation and family harmony, even if it means sacrificing themselves to do so by developing psychological disorders. The family system. Toxic shame is primarily fostered in significant relationships. If you do not value someone, it's hard to imagine being shamed by what he says or does. The possibility of toxic shame begins with our source relationship. If our primary caregivers are shame based, they will act shameless and pass their toxic shame on to us. There is no way to teach self value if one does not value oneself. Toxic shame is multi-generational. It is passed down from one generation to the next. Shame-based people often find other shame-based people and get married. And each member of a couple carries that shame from his or her own family system. Their marriage will be grounded in the same shame core. The major outcome of this will be a significant lack of intimacy. It is difficult to let someone get close to you if you feel defective and flawed as a human being. Shame-based couples maintain non-intimacy through poor communication, non-productive circular fighting, games, manipulation, vying for control, withdrawal, blaming, and confluence. Confluence is the agreement never to disagree. Confluence creates pseudo-intimacy. When a child is born to these shame-based parents, the deck is stacked from the beginning. The job of parents is to model. Modeling includes how to be a man or woman. That would have been very helpful. How to relate intimately to another person. That would have also been very helpful. How to acknowledge and express emotions. Very, very helpful. How to fight fairly. Yeah, sure. How to have physical, emotional, and intellectual boundaries. Very, very, very helpful. How to communicate. How to cope and survive life's unending problems. How to be self-disciplined. How to love oneself and another. So, so, so important. Shame-based parents cannot do any of this. They simply don't know how. Children need their parents' time and attention. Giving one's time is part of the work of love. It means being there for the child, attending to their needs rather than the parents' needs. For example, I used to spend a lot of time with my son. Often it consisted of watching a football game while my son played in the room. If he made too much noise, I scolded him. We spent time together, but it was quantitative rather than qualitative. Part of the work of love is listening. Children are clear about what they need and will tell us in no uncertain terms. We need to listen to them. This requires a fair amount of emotional maturity. To listen well, one must have their own needs met. To listen well, one must have their own needs met. You cannot be in that state of stress. When we are shame-based, we can only focus on our own ache. Needy, shame-based parents cannot possibly take care of their children's needs. The child is shamed whenever he or she is needy because the child's needs clash with the parent's needs. The child grows up and becomes an adult, but beneath the mask of an adult, there is a child who is neglected. Needy children are insatiable. They have a hole in their soul created by unresolved grief and developmental dependency deficits. This makes them adult children. They can never get enough as adults. Healthy adults are satisfied with what they get and work harder to get more the next time. Adult children can't get enough because it's really a child's needs that are in question. Very, very good. For example, in my beginning relationship, I always went too far and wanted too much. If I met a girl and we hit it off, I immediately began talking in terms of marriage, even after one date. Once she was in love with me, I expected her to take care of me like a mother. Needy children need parents. So adult children turn lovers into parents, someone to care for their needs. The bottom line is that shame-based needy marriages that receive no treatment create shame-based needy families. The children grow up in the soil of shame rather than the nurturing arms of love. Shame-based families operate according to the laws of social systems. When the social system is dysfunctional, it is rigid and closed. All the individuals in the family are enmeshed in a kind of trance-like frozenness. They take care of the system's needs for balance rather than their own needs for growth. This is so good, guys. Children go to school, church, or synagogue and grow up to live in society. Each of these systems adds its own unique contribution to toxic shame in the process. So the next part is Max's story. I'm going to skip over that because, yeah, we don't need to go into that detail. You guys can buy the book. I mean, this is one of the books that I've read that I definitely recommend that you buy. I mean, you can probably find the ebook version online. But yeah, anyway, we're going to just skip over that story and just go through some of the more main text again in chapter 3. This part is called the dysfunctional family. The dysfunctional families. Talk as Judith Broderick says so well in Transition, it's a book. Marriage and thus family are where we live out our most intimate and powerful human experiences. The stuff that family is made of, bloodier and more passionate than the stuff of friendship, and the costs are greater too. Our families are where we first learn about ourselves. Our core identity comes from the mirroring of the eyes of our primary caregivers. Our destiny depends on some extent on the health of our caregivers. In Max's case, his father Jerome was a full-fledged alcoholic and womanizing sex addict. Jerome was sex-based. He had been abandoned by his own father and was raised by an emotionally incestuous alcoholic mother. Almost forgot the alcoholic part. So he really had it hard. Going back to the reading, Max's description of his grandmother was frightening. By the time Max was 8, his mother had divorced his father. From 8 years on, Max was neglected emotionally and financially. His older brother, Ralph, took over the role of being Max's father. His older sister, Maxine, also took on a parenting role. They were his little parents. Max's mom and dad married at ages 17 and 18, respectively. They married because they were pregnant with Max's older sister, Maxine. Felicia came from a staunchly Christian family. The family demanded that Jerome and Felicia marry Felicia. Felicia was extremely prudish and shut down emotionally. She carried her mother's repressed sexuality. Her mother had been sexually violated by her own father, also, who was an alcoholic, and 2 of her 9 brothers. Felicia's mother had never dealt with her incestuous issues and carried them as her shame secret. Felicia, with ostensibly proper and prudish, had acted out the sexual shame of her mother by getting pregnant at the age of 17. Felicia had also been sexually violated by her maternal grandfather. Jesus Christ. Felicia was her father's emotional spouse. She became his little woman and confidant after her mother withdrew with hypochondria. Jerome was also the emotional caregiver of his father. He was the little man and became the surrogate spouse. Yep, that sounds familiar. Both Max's parents were surrogate spouses because each one of their parents had unresolved sexual issues. Their surrogate spousing had sexual overtones. This is how this enmeshment, covert emotional incest, that's how it becomes, something that you would notify or think about as sexual, but incest can also be emotional. And those lines can also blur. Going back to the reading, both were severely shame-based. When parents who have unresolved sexual issues become enmeshed with one of their children, that child is, more often than not, covertly seduced by the parent's own unresolved sexuality. There are no toxic shame secrets in families, only denial. The secrets get acted out by one or more of the children. Both of Max's parents were covert incest victims, codependent and addicted. Max's mother was dutiful but cold and non-sensual. Max was born 5 years later than Jerome, and Felicia were married. He had not planned and not really wanted. He was not planned and not really wanted. He was an accidental pregnancy. Max was what is called the lost child in family systems theory. So family systems, IFS. So the next section, he's going to go into the family systems. I'm going to family as social systems and then bridging that over to IFS, internal family systems. I'm going to skip over this section as well. He talks about the different roles and things. We've touched on some of this before. So as an example, He also talks about the multi-generational nature of family illness, and you can see this kind of family chart diagram. This can also be very helpful when you're doing your own parenting work. If you haven't done therapy or something, these are the kind of maps that will help you gain a better understanding of the people in your family, associate the issues that each of those people had, and to see how they carry down over time across different people, and how, for example, if your mother was an incest. Covert incest survivor, your father was a physical incest survivor, as well as alcoholic, and your mother was drug addict. You can um, you can see it back in time how these things came about, and then with that knowledge and understanding, you can better nurture and protect and guide yourself to a better place, so you can begin to release some of these patterns. But until you develop that understanding and that clarity of how this is passed down through your family and that it's not just you, then you're not going to be able to move forward. So now we're going to go to the shame-based family rules. I will read the intro and then I'll read through the list of the rules, but I won't go into details of those. um yeah, so shame-based family rules. Each family system has several categories of rules. There are rules about celebrating and socializing, rules about touching and sexuality, rules about sickness and proper health, rules about vacation and vocations, rules about household maintenance and the spending of money. Perhaps the most important rules are about feeling, interpersonal communication, and parenting. Toxic shame is consciously transferred by means of shaming rules. In shame based families, the rules consciously shame all the members. Generally, however, the children receive the major blunt of the shame. Power is a cover up for shame. Power is frequently hierarchical. Dad can yell at anyone. Mom can yell at anyone but dad. The oldest can yell at anyone but mom and dad. The youngest tortures the cat. Dysfunctional family rules. Number one is control or chaos. Number two is perfectionism or anonym. Number three is blame. Number five is denial of the five freedoms. I will read this. So each of the freedoms has to do with basic human power: the power to perceive, to think, to interpret, to feel, to want, and choose, and the power to imagine. Number five is the no talk rule. So don't talk, don't express. The number six, don't listen rule. Everybody is so busy in their own lives that they don't really listen to each other, and you cannot really communicate unless you're listening to each other. Number seven, don't make mistakes. Mistakes reveal that you are flawed, vulnerable, and unworthy, not seen as opportunities for learning and growth. Number eight, unreliability. Do not expect reliability in relationships. Don't trust anyone and don't expect people to be there for you. And then number nine, don't trust, since no one is going to validate your rules anyway. And so these rules are not written on a refrigerator door. However, they operate as the principles that govern all shame based family systems and their interpretation of relationships. They continue the cycle of shame for generations. The parenting rules in most of the Western families create massive shame. Add alcoholism, incest, physical abuse to these systems, and you get major dysfunctionality. Alice Miller summed up these rules under the title Poisonous Pedagogy in her book, For Your Own Good. So this is again programming you and downloading you with the most life destroying self beliefs and worldview, which is again why you know we have to do so much work and we're in this process to build our understanding, develop and enhance our self image, and really adapt our worldview to something that's more um, effective for us to live as adults today, independent, powerful, sovereign adults today. One of the things that's most important, again, why I share all of this text, I know that reparenting is not an intellectual exercise. And I know that this program for up until this point in time has been very intellectual heavy because I'm exposing you to the new text. You see, I'm uploading these books, I'm always reading, exposing you to new information, because if you don't, you will never get this information, because we're supposed to be learning all of this over time from social learning theory. So that means your uncle is teaching you pieces, you're learning pieces from your best friend, maybe your neighbor, your mom, dad, obviously. But if you have a void where these are the rules, where you don't trust, you don't talk, you don't share, you're not learning all the fucking rules of life. So this is how people end up to be adults, and they say, damn, I don't have any life skills. I don't know how life works. Yeah, because you're supposed to be learning from other people. People failed you. You are not the failure. If you get to that point and realize, oh, damn, I don't have any of these skills or knowledge or understanding of how the world works. I mean, it's your responsibility to develop now, but it was other people's responsibility to fill that for you. Instead, your parents chose to destroy your will, which is the opposite of life giving. It's like you bring a life into the world to destroy it. Like, what is the point? What is the point? Obviously, we know now is to enslave that person so that the parent can use that child for their needs. So you give the child life to take their life away, by destroying their will physically, emotionally, whatever kind of abuse. But that's not why we're here. That's not the point to have children. So back to the reading. The rules from Alice Miller and For Your Own Good, The Poisonous Pedagogy. Number one, adults are the masters of dependent children. Number two, they determine in godlike action what is wrong and what is right. Number three, the child is held responsible for the parent's anger. Lord have mercy. Not anymore. Not anymore. Number four, the parents must always be shielded. Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. We're going to disintegrate that shield and they're going to face it because we're not holding this energy in ourselves, right? This is what happened when that shame get internalized. They try to offload it and push it onto you. No, we don't do that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. Going on with the reading. Number five, the child's life-affirming feelings pose a threat to the autocratic adult. Jesus Christ, that's when you become so shut down even as a child that you no longer even have emotions that you can access to connect with other people. So you become so, I mean, personally, this is my experience. I never read this list and I don't remember reading this, but when I read that last rule from Alice Miller, she called this list the poisonous pedagogy. So the rules that these dysfunctional families program you and operate from a basis of, what's really crazy is that Alice Miller, despite all of her work and research, you know, on dysfunctional family situations coming from her own dysfunctional family, right? So she's not somebody just writing something, she's writing from her own experience. What is most amazing is that she was able to produce all of this information, all of this knowledge, but she was unable and she failed to make significant changes or sufficient changes for her own son, who is also now a psychologist and doing interviews and things like that. So he has some really good interviews. If you look for the son of Alice Miller, who wrote The Drama of the Gifted Child, as well as For Your Own Good, her work is outstanding for the field. But I found it so curious that someone who could deliver so much to this field in like the early 80s or something still struggled with her own child. So for that reason, it's important. Number six, so we're not done here. The child's will must be broken as soon as possible. Again, what is the point of bringing a child into life to destroy their will? You are giving life to destroy life. So why you even waste your time and money having the child? Like, I don't understand. Again, this is what you do when you want to make someone your slave, not to raise a child. Number seven, all this must happen at a very early age so the child won't notice and will therefore not be able to expose the adults. Too late, bitches. All y'all motherfuckers are exposed. Expose all of my parents. I don't give a shit. I exposed all of it, man. I love that I'm reading this now, reflecting on this at my stage of growth, because now I'm directly countering all of these rules. And I did it instinctively. I read this book about 2 years ago, but everything that else has been coming through has just been, maybe this was somewhere in the back of my mind, but I've really been standing my ground. So much of this is about standing your ground and allowing to be your own person. Again, and I'm going to read that last rule. All this must happen at a very early age so that the child won't notice and therefore won't be able to expose the adults. Can y'all see this rule number 7? I think the shadow is on there. Literally, you're supposed to destroy the child's soul when they are so young so that they cannot remember and hold you accountable. Can y'all believe this bullshit? Like, ain't nobody got time for this, y'all. I mean, I told my mom, like, I would never, ever in my life go through the same experience and then allow my child to have to go through the same thing. Why? If I struggle so much, would I want my child to struggle with the same thing? It's ridiculous. Continuing with the reading, such beliefs about the parent's absolute power stem from the time of monarchs and kings. They are pre-democratic and pre-Einsteinian. Jesus Christ, I didn't even know that was a thing. Continuing with the reading, they presuppose a world of eternal laws, Deus Maxima view of the world. This was the world of Newton and Descartes. Such a worldview has been refuted many, many times over. This poisonous pedagogy justifies highly abusive methods for suppressing the child's vital spontaneity. Physical beatings, lying, duplicity, manipulation, scare tactics, withdrawal of love, isolation, and coercion to the point of torture. All of these methods are toxically shaming. In that last paragraph there, all of these methods are toxically shaming. So toxic shame is the destruction of the spirit. So again, as I said before, why have a child bring life just to destroy life? Like, are they trying to play God or something? I don't understand. Or either just to enslave us, we can become, the serving of their needs. It's ridiculous. So I'm gonna get into the last section here, and then it picks up from the first reading that we had today. Shame as a state of being. Let me explain here on the process whereby healthy shame is transformed into toxic shame. The process is called absoluting, uh, absolutizing, or internalization process. The healthy feelings of shame is lost, and a frozen state of being emerges, whereby the person believes themselves to be flawed and defective as a human being. This transformation involves three dynamics. Number one, identification with shame-based muddled and the carrying of their unexpressed shame. Number two, the trauma of abandonment and the shame binding all one's feelings, needs, and drives. And number three, the interconnection and magnification of visual memories or scenes, and the retaining of shaming auditory and kinesthetic imprints. So this is really, 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 really sad. Every time that the child is beaten, every time that the child is yelled at, all of those shaming messages are being internalized into the body. You know, and if your parents treat you this way, you're going to stumble across other friends, families, partners, bosses, and so forth who treat you the same way. And so that's how you can end up with such depressed or collapsed self-esteem and self-worth, because you don't even realize how you're being beaten down because it's been happening for so long, literally, because that's how you are programmed. And so you have to gain the awareness, and you have to begin living in a different way and inhabiting a new reality, a different way of being, in order to start externalizing some of this, because you've been internalizing way too much, and you need to start externalizing that shit, preferably back on your parents. As we discussed before, what happens with narcissism? Many narcissists, they're also just wounded little abused children, but are narcissists. They don't want to admit, the narcissist does not want to admit that my parents abused me. My parents didn't love me. The narcissist cannot say that. The narcissist cannot say that my parents didn't care about me. The narcissist cannot admit my parents beat me, abused me, or whatever, because to say that would destroy the narcissist's own idea if it's a grandiosity. So if a narcissist admitted, "Oh, my parents didn't like me, they abused me," you are destroying your own perceived value, right? Because if your parents abuse you, you cannot say you have a good value. So narcissists, they lie. They say they ignore the fact that they were abused by their parents, but at the same time, they still internalized all the hate from their parents. So then what do? They externalize their bullshit on everybody else that they date, their partners, their friends, their whatever. So the narcissist, they don't want to admit that their parents are bullshit and abusers, because that would decrease the value of how they see themselves and cause other people to see them bad. So they lie, and they say, "Oh, my parents were wonderful," even though they internalize all this abuse. And to get rid of it, they abuse other people. So this externalization process is very important. And for me, I think it's better to externalize this shit. If you want to externalize it, put it back on motherfuckers who gave it to you. Don't put it on random people, who didn't harm you, random people who actually could be healthy enough to build the actual connections that you need in order to get order the damage in the first place. So if you want to push it back on someone, don't talk like shit to your friends. That's pathetic. Do something with your own life. Don't beat your girlfriend or your baby mama. That's pathetic. You know, put the shit back on your parents. Don't put it on random people. Yeah, your parents, they had difficult childhoods and everything like that. But guess what? It was their responsibility to do something and change the pattern, right? It's not yours. That was not your responsibility as a child. But what really bothers me is that narcissists, they just ignore what their parents did, and then they make everyone else suffer for what their parents did. And for me, that is the most pathetic way of living. That's the most pathetic, because you don't even have enough integrity or strength to acknowledge that your parents weren't shit. And so now you have all this anger, but just to, again, lie to make yourself feel better. No, my parents didn't abuse me. My parents were wonderful. They always supported me. So they lied to themselves, Then what they do with all this anger inside, they abuse and spit all that shit on everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And it's so also he said in this book, where was that at? He said that it works. I think that was in the first reading that we had today. What was that? What was that reading that we saw that? Oh yeah, here it is. This is exactly what he was saying, that it works. That's why people do it, you know? They externalize that stuff because it does work. Where is that section? It's on the emotional abuse, because we just read it. We literally just read that in the last video from today. Violent offenders can. Where was that? I just made anyway. I mean, I know he put it in this book in this chapter 3. Anyway, chapter 5. I thought I had underlined it. I did somewhere, but I don't know where it is. I don't want to keep y'all waiting for too long. But you know, this book is so good. It's such a wake-up call. It's like one of those books you really have to read in small pieces because it's so heavy. There's so much information. It really just opens your eyes to so much, and you'll realize how you have been here. That section has. So this is on page 76. So he's talking about the how and why that people abuse. Offenders are literally addicted to the power of that physical violence give them. Physical offenders like the fear they induce in others. Violent offenders are shame-based and can completely avoid their toxic shame by bullying or hurting others. They can completely avoid it by bullying or hurting other people. So it works to displace your emotional energy onto someone else. It works, apparently, which is why your parents did it to you. And so, as opposed to continuing your life and lying to yourself to say that your parents were wonderful, and then going and treat everyone else like shit because your parents abuse you, why not put the shit back on your fucking parents? Now, I'm not encouraging you to do anything, but you know, in terms of how you're talking to yourself about the story of what happened and how you're allowing yourself to interact and behave with other people, I mean, just stop. Y'all, let's stop. This narcissist bullshit is getting enough. It's enough. You know, unless we begin to all individually and as a collective take responsibility for our own shit and stop trying to put the abuse that our parents gave us on everybody else, we never going to stop getting unfucking this world. You know, maybe you need to put it back on them old generations. I mean, they about to fall over and croak anyway, so may as well put this shit back on them. Why are you going to throw this shit on your young child? You're like, okay, if you internalize all of this shame, self-hate, disgust, anger, rage, you know, from your parents, why would you want to put it on a young person who want to then grow up and suffer and who is innocent? Why not put that shit back on your parents? That's what I don't understand. Like, that's so natural to me, and it seems so common sense. I don't understand why people struggle with that because yeah, for me, it's so sad that I see this pattern of how we all end up in this situation, and and I just uh, I just wish that we all can find a better way to deal with this, because this right now is pathetic. And so anyway, that's going to be the reading for this today. I might do one more short section, but thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Peace, guys.